In today's video, we're going to be talking about the impending recession that everyone has been talking about, even the Bank of England themselves. And we're going to be talking about what the recession means for you and steps that you can take right now in order to survive this impending recession. Hey guys, I'm Anita. Welcome to my channel. I'm a real estate investor here in the UK and have been investing in properties here for the last 7 years. So as a result of that, I am very interested in what's happening in the current markets, what's happening in the economy, and how it impacts me and how it impacts my investment. And I'm on a mission here on YouTube to create the ultimate health and wealth channel for you. So let's get started. What exactly is a recession? So in simple terms, a recession is a decline in a country's economic activity for a certain period of time and is defined by a fall in GDP for 2 successive quarters. GDP essentially is the total monetary value of all the goods and services that a country produces in 1 year. And in addition to GDP, economists also look at other factors when deciding whether or not a country is in a recession. And these include things like unemployment rates and also consumer demand. A recession is basically a sign that the economy isn't doing very well at the moment. And for the UK, the last recession was actually quite recently in 2020, and this was during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, this was a relatively short recession and only lasted 6 months. And the one before was during the economic crisis of 2008-2009, and that one lasted more than a year. It might help to also look at the opposite picture in order to understand what a recession is. So say the economy is doing really well and it's growing and companies are doing really well. This then means that they can afford to pay their employees really well. And by doing this gives people more money to spend. And a larger pay also means the government receives more in taxes, which means that the government themselves are now able to spend more money for public services. And recession is the exact opposite of this situation. It's where the economy isn't growing and is instead shrinking. And all of these things I just described go into reverse. Now, recession could be caused by multiple things. And these could be things like supply chain issues, where there's a shortage of food and energy supplies, which then drives the cost up. Or it could be caused by a major event like a war. And it can also be caused by periods of high inflation like we are currently seeing. And when inflation rises, the likelihood of a recession happening only increases. So according to the Office of National Statistics, ONS, we're not yet in a recession. They showed that in June to August of this year, GDP fell by 0.3%. And on 3rd of November, very recently, the Bank of England warned of an impending recession that would last a prolonged period of time. The Bank of England also predicts that the GDP will only shrink by 0.5% between May and August of next year, and again by 0.3% between September to December of next year. And they predict that the UK economy will enter a recession this year in 2022 and remain in a recession for all of 2023 all the way up to the first half of 2024. So knowing all this is well and good, but what does the recession actually mean for you? The first thing is job cuts. Due to the cost of living crisis and the extremely high rates of inflation, people have less disposable income to spend. And because they now have less disposable income to spend, it means that the businesses selling their products now make less money and have lower profits because people are simply buying less and less of their products. This cuts into their profits, which means that companies now have a relatively higher running cost and fixed costs and will now be forced to make cuts in order to offset the loss in profits. And the way companies sadly do this is by redundancies. So what we normally see during a recession is that job losses tend to rise, unemployment rates tend to increase. Also, fewer and fewer companies look to hire, which means that newly graduated students might even find it harder to find their first-time job. And the Bank of England have predicted that the unemployment rates are only going to keep rising till 2025. Next, we also see pay cuts. So the rising cost to businesses as their profits decline mean that aside from laying off staff, businesses now have to find other ways to cut back. And one of the ways is to lower the pay of their workers. Next is a credit crunch. So as you might have heard in the recent weeks, lenders have pulled several mortgages from the market, with up to 300 lenders predicted to have removed products from the market and have also raised interest rates along the same time. They have also started to become even more strict with who they lend money to and who gets approved for mortgages. So not only is borrowing money going to get more expensive, it's also going to get more difficult. Even your regular loan providers are carrying out much stricter stress tests to see whether or not you are able to handle the rising costs and interest and pay off the debt. And that brings us to the next point, which is the rising cost of debt. Because the Bank of England has raised interest rates, it's becoming more and more expensive to borrow money. So it's likely that your existing credit card repayments for the same amount of debt is only going to get more and more expensive for you. This also applies to mortgages, where we've seen our average interest rates only increase, whether that's for your residential home or for a buy-to-let. So all around, your debt is just getting more and more expensive. Recessions, They really suck. So now that we know this horrible outlook that a recession could possibly bring to us, it's time that we take some steps now in order to prevent being hit by the worst of it. So the most important thing to do is to stay calm and not panic. And then the first thing to do is to pay off your very expensive credit card debt, and preferably all of your debt if you can. Because we now know that the rates are going to only keep rising, it's time to act now before they go to even higher levels and our same debt only gets more expensive for us to keep. Also, it helps to have no debt on your credit card in case of an actual emergency and you're suddenly faced with unexpected expenses. And what has been seen in previous recessions is that credit card companies have even been known to lower your maximum credit card limit, which means that if you have a balance on your credit card, this can actually impact your credit score, and we don't want that. No. Next important thing to do is to have an emergency fund. Now, I talked about this in my budgeting video, which I highly recommend you watch because it's very insightful. Because with the future full of uncertainty and we don't know what's going to happen next, it helps to have money saved up. So any means you can to make some extra cash before the recessions hit, take full advantage of those opportunities because they may not be there once the recession hits. And your emergency fund should typically be around 3 months at least of your salary, but preferably much more. So in order to save up, what you basically need to do is to take a good look at your income, take a good look at your expenses, and cut all unnecessary spendings, hence the importance of budgeting. And the third thing to consider is restructuring your portfolio. So if you do have investments in the stock market, you've probably already seen a lot of fluctuations in the past few months, and you know that the outlook may not be very stable and may not be very great. So a potential option here is to take your investments over there and put them into a more stable, more resilient investment vehicle like bonds. Bonds typically have lower yields, however they are more resilient during a recession. Other investment items include things like precious metals like gold, silver, which tend to hold their value over time. Once again, here's where you should probably speak to a financial advisor before you make any major monetary decisions. There is a free government-backed platform called Money Helper, which I have linked down below, that is able to offer free financial advice in order to help you make the best decisions for your money. But as always guys, do your research and speak to the professionals before making any major financial decisions. So say the recession has now hit, what do we do? So the first tip is working on your CV or your resume, and this is essentially working on your job application skills. Say the worst happens and you've been laid off, what you would like to have ready is an up-to-date resume, up-to-date cover letter, up-to-date LinkedIn profile, and here's where you look at all of these different items and make sure they're at the best possible level to help you find your next job. It also helps to get in touch with previous colleagues and previous managers who can help endorse you and give you a great reference. It also helps to reconnect and reach out to your broader network, whether this is on LinkedIn or people that you know, because you never know once you start talking to someone and reveal your personal circumstance. They might be able to connect you with someone they know who's looking to hire someone, or they themselves might be looking to hire someone and can offer you a job. Like they say, your network can really help your net worth. Second thing to do is to look for new opportunities. So you never know what's out there until you start looking. And now this is one tip that applies whether in a recession or not. It literally pays to keep your eyes open and to look for opportunities. So be proactive, get in touch with headhunters, get in touch with staffing agencies, get in touch with your network and look for opportunities out there and see which one is best suited to you. And for this one, LinkedIn is always a great place to start. So make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date and best reflects what you can offer. The third tip is to learn new skills. Now this helps if you're looking to pivot, so change your entire career, or you're simply looking to expand on the number of jobs you can apply for. The more you learn, the more you earn. And learning new skills does not necessarily need to be for your full-time job. It could simply be learning a new skill for your new side hustle, which could also be a new source of revenue. And examples of these include video editing, graphic design, coding, and many more. And in order to save paying for courses, you could also look at the existing company you're currently working with to see if they offer courses in topics that you're interested in order to help you learn that new skill. Now the next one might sound obvious, but it is basically cutting costs. If you're in a recession, you want to cut costs and not overspend. So hold back on major purchases and only spend on essentials. The fifth one is finding new sources of income. Now, in addition to what I mentioned about the side hustles, you could also look at existing ways that you have to make more money. And these could be things like letting out a spare room that you have on Airbnb, or it could be renting out your car on an app like Turo, or if you have a very valuable skill, you could also make money by teaching this skill to others. You could even design your own course course. And the last tip is not to liquidate your portfolio. While this might be very tempting with the economy looking super shaky, it's likely that if you sell now, you're going to get a terrible price for your asset, and we do not want that. Investing is a long-term game, and while you might experience short-term losses, history does show us that the market does recover over time. And finally, it's worth remembering that recessions don't last forever. They are part of the normal economic cycle, and we've been here before and we got out of it, and we will once again. Recent global recessions have lasted about 10 months on average, and the Bank of England predicts this one is going to last around 15 months. And also remember that while the outlook may look gloomy, it's best to focus on only what you can control. And always it helps to speak to the experts, so speak to Money Helper for free financial advice, and speak to Step Change for free advice on debt. And if any of this news is causing you stress and has been ruining your mental health, there are organizations like Mind and Samaritans who are more than willing to help and more than willing to provide a listening ear. I've linked for all of these organizations down below for you to access. So that was my talk on the impending recession, what's been going on, what people have been talking about, and I hope you guys found it useful. It may not be the best of news, however, it's best to be prepared and it's best to have in mind what you can expect. So overall, I hope you guys found this useful and relevant, and if you do, please do remember to like, subscribe and share. It would mean the world to me. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all in my next video. Bye guys.